Kang Joon-ho was 7 years old when his world ended. The car accident took both his parents on a rainy Tuesday evening. One moment, they were a family. The next moment, they were orphans. His little sister Soo-min was only 4. All she understood was that her big brother was the only person left. Joon-ho became everything to her. Her protector, her parent, her whole world, and she became his reason to survive. Their grandmother took them in, but she was old and tired. She did her best, but the weight of raising 2 broken children was too much for her fragile shoulders. So Joon-ho raised himself, and he raised Soo-min too. He walked her to school every morning. He helped her with homework every night. To her, Joon-ho was not just a brother, he was the son. When he was safety, he was everything. And somewhere deep inside her young heart, a seed was planted. A seed that would grow into something beautiful, but also something dangerous. Years passed, the children became adults. Joon-ho grew into a striking man. Tall, sharp features, quiet intensity. He worked hard, studied harder, built a career in architecture that made their grandmother proud before she passed away. He bought a modest apartment near Haeundae Beach. He took care of Soo-min, paid for her university, gave her everything she needed. And Soo-min, she grew into a beautiful young woman, delicate features, long dark hair, a smile that could light up any room. But behind that smile, there was something else, something she hid from the world, something she barely understood herself. She loved her brother, but not the way a sister should. Her love had grown, twisted, consuming. She did not want to share him with anyone. She could not share him with anyone. The thought of another woman touching him, holding him, having his attention, it made her feel like she was dying inside. She told herself it was normal. She told herself she was just protective. She told herself that no one would ever love Joon-ho the way she did. And she was right about that last part. No one would ever love him the way she did, because her love was not love at all. It was possession, and she would do anything, anything to keep him for herself. Joon-ho's first serious girlfriend was named Yoona. She was kind, gentle, when a nurse at Busan National University Hospital. She made Joon-ho smile in a way Soo-min had never seen before. And Soo-min, she hated her instantly. She hid it well at first, smiled at family dinners, complimented Yoona's cooking, pretended to be the supportive little sister. But at night, alone in her room, she would stare at the ceiling and imagine Yoona disappearing, just vanishing, like she never existed. The relationship lasted 4 months. Then one day, Yoona called Joon-ho crying. She said she could not do this anymore. She said strange things had been happening. Someone had been sending her messages from anonymous accounts, cruel messages, threatening messages. Someone had been leaving notes on her car. Someone had told her colleagues that she was unstable, that she had a history of mental illness. None of it was true, but the damage was done. Yoona was scared, she was humiliated, and she could not stay with a man whose life seemed to attract such chaos. Joon-ho was devastated. He could not understand what had happened. He investigated, but found nothing. The anonymous accounts were untraceable. The notes had no fingerprints. It was like a ghost had destroyed his relationship. He never suspected Soo-min. How could he? She was his baby sister. She was the one who held him while he cried over the breakup. She was the one who told him that Yoona did not deserve him anyway. She was the one who made him dinner and watched movies with him until he felt better. She was his comfort, his constant, his family, and that was exactly what she wanted. 2 years later, Joon-ho tried again. Her name was Minji. She was an artist, free-spirited, full of laughter. She painted murals on the buildings of Gamshin Culture Village, and she made Joon-ho feel alive in ways he had forgotten were possible. Soo-min watched them fall in love, and the darkness inside her grew. She was smarter this time, more patient. She befriended Minji first, gained her trust, learned her secrets, learned her insecurities, learned exactly where to strike. It started slowly. A comment here, a suggestion there. She told Minji that Junho had trouble with commitment. She told Minji that their mother had been unfaithful to their father. She told Minji that Junho had once told her, in confidence, that he did not believe in marriage. None of it was true, but Minji did not know that, and the seeds of doubt, once planted, began to grow. Then came the photographs. Sumin had hired someone to take pictures of Junho having coffee with a female colleague. Just coffee, nothing more. But the angle was suggestive, the lighting was intimate, and Minji, already fragile from weeks of whispered lies, saw exactly what Sumin wanted her to see. The relationship ended in tears and accusations. Junho defended himself, but Minji would not listen. She called him a liar, a cheat, a man just like all the others, and she left. Once again, Junho was broken. Once again, he could not understand what had happened. And once again, Sumin was there to pick up the pieces. She held him, comforted him, told him that love was simply not meant for everyone, told him that perhaps he was meant to focus on family, on her, and Junho, exhausted and heartbroken, began to believe it. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was cursed in love. Maybe the only woman who would ever truly understand him was his sister. But fate had other plans, because fate was about to send someone Sumin had never prepared for. Someone who would not break, someone who would not run, someone who would look into the darkness and refuse to look away. Her name was Zayla Davenport. She walked into the Busan International Architecture Conference like she owned every room she had ever entered. And because in many ways, she did. Zayla was 31 years old, African-American, born in Detroit, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. She knew poverty intimately. She knew hunger. She knew what it felt like to wear the same shoes until they fell apart. And she had sworn, at 14 years old, that she would never feel that way again. So she worked, harder than anyone around her, smarter than anyone expected. She got scholarships, then internships, then her first job at a tech startup in Silicon Valley, and then she built her own. By 26, she had launched her first company. By 28, she had sold it for more money than her mother would earn in 10 lifetimes. By 30, she had a fashion brand, a venture capital firm, Amrin Investments spanning 3 continents. Zayla was worth more than most people could comprehend, but you would never know it by looking at her. She drove a modest car, wore simple clothes, lived in a comfortable apartment, not a mansion. She remembered poverty too well to flaunt her wealth, and she never, ever wanted money to define how people saw her. She wanted to be seen for who she was, not what she had. This would prove to be both a blessing and a curse. Zayla came to Busan for a conference on sustainable architecture. Her venture firm was looking to invest in green building technology, and Korea was leading the world in innovative design. She had no intention of finding love. She had no time for distractions. She had meetings scheduled back-to-back and a flight home in 4 days. But then, she saw him. Kang Junho was presenting on stage, talking about biophilic design and the integration of nature into urban spaces. His voice was calm, his passion was evident, and when he looked up from his notes and their eyes met across the crowded auditorium, Zayla felt something shift inside her chest, something she had not felt in years, something dangerous. She told herself to ignore it. She told herself that she did not have time for this. But after the presentation, she found herself walking toward him anyway. And when she extended her hand and introduced herself, when his fingers touched hers and she saw him smile for the first time, she knew who this man was going to change everything. They had dinner that night, then coffee the next morning, then lunch, then dinner again. 4 days turned into a week, then 2. Zayla canceled her flight, then canceled the next one, then stopped booking flights altogether. She told herself she was staying for business, for investment opportunities, for networking. But she knew the truth. She was staying for him. Junho was unlike any man she had ever met. He was quiet where others were loud, thoughtful where others were reckless. He listened, truly listened, when she spoke. He asked questions that showed he was actually interested in her mind, not just her appearance. He made her laugh. He made her think. He made her feel seen. And Zayla, who had spent her entire life building walls, found those walls crumbling, one conversation at a time, one shared sunset at a time, one long walk along Songdo Beach at a time. She was falling, fast, hard, completely, and so was he. But there was one problem. Soo Min. From the moment Soo Min met Zayla, she knew this one was different. The others had been soft, easily manipulated, quick to believe lies and quicker to run. But Zayla looked at her with eyes that saw too much. When Soo Min smiled her sweetest smile, Zayla smiled back, but there was something watchful in her gaze. When Soo Min hugged her and welcomed her to the family, Zayla hugged her back, but held herself slightly apart. When Soo Min told her stories about Junho's past, Zayla listened politely, but asked questions that were too sharp, too specific. This woman was not naive. This woman was not easily broken. This woman was a threat. The biggest threat Soo Min had ever faced. And she knew that the usual tactics would not work. She would have to be smarter this time, more patient, more ruthless. She would have to find Zayla's weakness, and she would have to destroy her before Zayla could take Junho away forever. The first attack came 3 weeks into the relationship. It was subtle, almost invisible. Soo Min invited Zayla to lunch, just the two of them. Sister bonding, she called it. They went to a beautiful restaurant overlooking the ocean. They ordered seafood and wine. They talked about life, about dreams, about June H, and then, casually, as if it was nothing, Soo Min mentioned money. She talked about how hard life had been growing up, how they had struggled after their parents died, how Junho had sacrificed everything to take care of her. And then she said something that made Zayla's spine stiffen. You know, my brother is very proud. He would never ask for help, even if he needed it. I just hope whoever he ends up with understands that she will have to take care of him. Financially, emotionally, he has nothing left to give. The implication was clear. She thought Zayla was poor. She thought Zayla would need to provide for Junho. She was testing her, seeing if money would scare her away. Zayla sipped her wine and smiled. I appreciate you telling me this, she said calmly. But I am not with your brother for what he can give me. I am with him for who he is. Soo Min's smile faltered, just for a second. Then it returned, brighter than before. Of course, she said sweetly. I never doubted that. But inside, she was already planning her next move. The second attack came 2 weeks later. This time, Soo Min involved the extended family. Their aunt and uncle came to visit from Seoul. Old-fashioned people, traditional values. They believed in Korean marriages, Korean bloodlines, Korean traditions. Soo Min had told them everything. She had told them that Junho was dating a foreigner, an American, a black American. She had told them that this woman was clearly after money, after citizenship, after whatever she could take. She had poisoned their minds before they ever laid eyes on Zayla. The dinner was a disaster. The aunt refused to look at Zayla directly. The uncle asked pointed questions about her family, her background, her finances. She befriended Minji. He asked if she owned property, if she had savings, if she expected Junho to support her. Zayla answered every question with grace. She did not mention her companies. She did not mention her wealth. She simply said that she was an independent businesswoman who could take care of herself. But the family was not convinced. They saw her modest clothes and assumed she was struggling. They saw her warm smile and assumed she was naive. They saw her dark skin and made assumptions that had nothing to do with who she actually was. When at the end of the dinner, the uncle pulled Junho aside. She is not right for you, he said firmly. She is using you. She wants your money, your stability, your citizenship. Wake up before it is too late. Junho defended her. He argued. He insisted that they were wrong, but the seeds had been planted. Doubt, once planted, is hard to kill. And Sumin watched it all from across the room, smiling. But here is the thing about Zayla Davenport. She was not the kind of woman who ran from problems. She had memorized his password months ago. The text said, "Don't bother coming back. I've realized this was a mistake. It's over." Then she deleted the text from his phone, and she waited. Zayla landed in Busan at 7 p.m. She turned on her phone. She saw the message. And for the first time in months, her composure cracked. She read it again and again. Her hands trembled. Her chest tightened. This could not be real. They had talked that morning. He had said he loved her. He had said he could not wait to see her. And now, this? Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Zayla took a deep breath. She closed her eyes and she made a decision. She was not going to run. She was not going to cry. She was going to get answers, face to face. She took a taxi directly to Junho's apartment. She did not call ahead. She did not warn him. She simply showed up. And when Junho opened the door, his face lit up with surprise and joy. "Zayla, I thought your flight wasn't until—" He stopped, because he saw her expression, the hurt, the confusion, the barely contained fury. "What message?" he asked slowly. "The one you sent me," she said, "telling me not to come back, telling me it was over." Junho's face went pale. "I never sent you any message. Check your phone." He checked. There was nothing. No sent message. No record. Nothing. But Zayla pulled out her phone and showed him. The message was there, from his number, clear as day. "I didn't send this," he whispered. "Zayla, I swear to you, I didn't send this." And in that moment, something clicked in Zayla's mind. She looked at Junho. She looked at the message, and she knew, with absolute certainty, who was responsible. "Where is Su-min?" she asked quietly. Junho frowned. She was supposed to pick you up from the airport. She said she would—" He stopped. His face changed. A terrible understanding began to dawn. "No," he said. "No, she wouldn't." "Call her," Zayla said. "Right now. Ask her where she is." Junho called. Sumin answered on the third ring. "Appa, I was just about to call you. There was terrible traffic and I got to the airport late and Zayla wasn't there and—" "Sumin?" Junho interrupted. "She's here. She's standing right in front of me." Silence, a long, terrible silence. She is. Did you send a message from my phone?" More silence. "Oppa, I don't know what you're talking about." But her voice was shaking now. The mask was slipping. And Junho, who had spent his entire life believing in his sister, who had sacrificed everything for her, who had trusted her more than anyone in the world, he finally began to see. "Come home," he said quietly. "We need to talk." He hung up before she could respond. Then he turned to Zayla. His eyes were filled with something she had never seen before. Horror. "How long have you suspected?" he asked. Zayla took his hand. "Long enough," she said gently. "But I needed proof. I needed you to see it yourself. Because if I had just told you, you wouldn't have believed me. I would have—" "No," she said firmly. "You wouldn't have. She's your sister. You love her. And that's not a weakness. It's beautiful. But she has used that love against you for years. And tonight, we're going to find out exactly how far it goes." Su-min arrived 30 minutes later. Her eyes were red. Her hands were trembling. She looked at Zayla like she was seeing a ghost. "Oppa, I can explain." "Can you?" Junho asked coldly. "Can you explain Yuna? Can you explain the anonymous messages that destroyed my relationship? Can you explain the photographs that turned Minji against me? Can you explain why every woman I have ever loved has been driven away, and you were always there to comfort me afterward?" Sumin's face crumpled. "You don't understand." Then help me understand. His voice cracked. Help me understand how my own sister could do this to me. The room went silent, and then Suman spoke. But what came out of her mouth was not an apology. It was something far more disturbing. They weren't good enough for you. Her voice was barely a whisper. None of them were good enough for you. Yuna was weak. Minji was flighty. They would have left you eventually anyway. They didn't love you like I do. They couldn't love you like I do. Zayla watched as Junho's face went from anger to horror. Sumin, I'm your brother. I know, she was crying now. I know that. Don't you think I know that? But you're all I have. You're all I've ever had. When Mom and Dad died, you were the only one who held me. You were the only one who promised to never leave. And every time you look at another woman, every time you smile at them the way you used to smile at me, I feel like I'm dying. She fell to her knees. I can't lose you, Appa. I can't. I won't. I don't care what I have to do. Or I won't let anyone take you away from me. The silence that followed was deafening. Junho stood frozen. His world. Everything he thought he knew about his family, about his sister, about his life. It was all crumbling, and standing in the wreckage was the woman he loved, the woman Sumin had tried to destroy, the woman who had seen the truth and stayed anyway. 3 days passed, 3 days of silence, 3 days of Sumin locked in her room, refusing to eat, refusing to talk. 3 days of Junho walking through his apartment like a ghost, replaying every moment of his life, wondering how he had missed the signs, and 3 days of Zayla, waiting. She had not pushed him, had not demanded answers or decisions. She had simply been there, steady and solid, a lighthouse in his storm. But she was not idle. The investigation she had started weeks ago had finally delivered results, and what she found was worse than she had imagined. The private firm had traced the anonymous accounts used to harass Yuna. They had traced the fake evidence used against Minji. They had traced deleted messages, hidden payments, and a trail of digital destruction that spanned years. All of it led back to one person, So-min. But there was more. The investigators had discovered something else, something that explained everything. 5 years ago, Su-min had been hospitalized, a mental health facility outside Seoul. The official diagnosis was on record: separation anxiety disorder, dependent personality disorder, and something the doctors had noted with concern: obsessive attachment with unhealthy undertones toward her primary caregiver, Junho, her brother. The facility had recommended intensive therapy, long-term treatment, possibly medication, but Su-min had checked herself out after 2 weeks, against medical advice, and she had never told Junho. He had been traveling for work that month. She had told him she was visiting friends in Jeju. He had believed her. Why wouldn't he? She was his sister, his baby sister. He trusted her completely, and she had used that trust to hide the darkness growing inside her. Zayla sat with the report in her hands. Her heart was heavy. This was not a story of evil. This was a story of illness, of trauma. One of a young woman who had lost her parents and clung to the only person she had left, until that grip became a stranglehold. Su-min needed help, real help, professional help, but she had refused it, and in doing so, she had hurt everyone around her, including herself. Zayla closed the file. She knew what she had to do. She called Junho that evening. "We need to talk," she said. "All 3 of us. Tomorrow. Your apartment." He was silent for a long moment. "What did you find?" "The truth," she said simply. "And Su-min needs to hear it too. She needs to understand what's happening to her. She needs to get help before this gets any worse. And if she refuses," Zayla's voice was gentle but firm, "then you need to make a choice. Because I love you. Anna, but I will not spend my life fighting someone who sees me as the enemy. I deserve better than that. And so do you." Junho was quiet. Then Finally, he spoke. I'll talk to her tomorrow. Be here at noon. I'll be there. The next morning, Zayla did something she rarely did. She dressed for war, not literally, but symbolically. She chose her clothes carefully. A crisp white blouse, perfectly tailored black trousers, elegant gold jewelry, understated but expensive. She pulled her natural hair into a sleek updo, applied just enough makeup to look powerful without trying too hard. And when she looked in the mirror, she saw the woman she had built herself to become, confident, formidable, untouchable. Today, Su Min was going to learn something important. Zayla was not a woman to be underestimated, and she was done playing defense. She arrived at Junho's apartment at exactly noon. He opened the door. His face was tired, worn, but there was something else there too. Relief. Relief that she had come. Relief that he was not facing this alone. She's in the living room, he said quietly. Zayla nodded and walked in. Su Min was sitting on the couch. She looked like she had not slept in days. Her hair was unwashed. Her eyes were hollow. She did not look up when Zayla entered, but her hands were clenched into fists, ready for battle. Zayla sat down across from her. Junho remained standing, caught between the two women who mattered most to him. The silence stretched. Then Zayla spoke. When I know about the hospital, Su Min's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide. What? How? I know about the diagnosis. I know about the obsessive attachment. I know that the doctors told you to get help, and you refused. I know everything. Su Min's face twisted. You had no right? I had every right, Zayla interrupted calmly. You tried to destroy my relationship. You tried to make me believe that the man I love wanted me gone. You have done this to every woman who ever got close to him. And you did it because you are sick. Not evil. Sick. There's a difference. Su Min was shaking now. You don't understand. I understand more than you think. Zayla leaned forward. I understand what it's like to lose everything as a child. I understand what it's like to cling to the one person who makes you feel safe. I understand fear and desperation and the feeling that if you let go, you'll disappear. Su Min's eyes filled with tears. But here's what you don't understand, Zayla continued. Holding on this tight, it's not love. It's a prison, for you and for him. You have turned your brother into a hostage, and until you get help, real help, you will never be free, and neither will he. Su Min broke. The tears came, and they did not stop. I don't know how to let go, she sobbed. I don't know how to be without him. He's all I have. He's all I've ever had. Junho moved then. He sat down beside his sister. And for the first time in days, he touched her, took her hands, looked into her eyes. You're not going to lose me, he said quietly. You're my sister. That will never change. But what you've been doing, it has to stop. Not just for Zayla, not just for me, for you. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to have your own life, your own relationships, your own future. And you can't have any of that until you face what's happening inside you. Su Min cried harder. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. He pulled her close. I know you are. But sorry isn't enough anymore. You need to get help. Real help. Will you do that? For me? A long pause. Then, finally, ma'am. She nodded. I'll try, she whispered. I'll try. The weeks that followed were hard. Su Min checked into a treatment facility in Daegu. This time, she stayed. She had video calls with Junho every Sunday. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she was angry. Sometimes she talked about their parents, about the accident, about the grief she had never properly processed. It was messy, painful, real, but it was also healing. Slowly, very slowly, she began to change. And Junho, he began to heal too. He talked to a therapist himself, confronted the guilt he had carried for years, the feeling that he had somehow failed his sister by not seeing her pain sooner. He learned to forgive himself, And he learned something else too. He learned that he was allowed to be happy, that loving Zayla did not mean abandoning Sumin, that his heart was big enough for both in different ways. But there was still one more conversation that needed to happen. The one about money. It came on a random Tuesday evening. Junho was cooking dinner when Zayla arrived at his apartment. She had been traveling again, meetings in Singapore and Hong Kong, but she had told him nothing about why. He assumed it was consulting work, freelance advising, something small. He had no idea. "I need to tell you something," she said as she sat at his kitchen counter. He glanced over his shoulder. "That sounds serious." "It is." He turned off the stove, gave her his full attention. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She took a deep breath. "But I haven't been completely honest with you about who I am, about what I do, about what I have." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Zayla pulled out her phone, opened an article, handed it to him. And the headline read, "Forbes 30 Under 30 in alum. Zayla Davenport closes $200 million investment deal in Asian tech markets." There was her picture, smiling, professional, powerful. Junho stared at the screen, read the article, read it again, then looked up at her. "This is you? That's me. You own multiple companies." "Yes, my net worth is significant." "I didn't tell you because," she paused, "because I wanted you to see me, not my money. I spent my whole life being invisible, and then I spent years being seen only for what I could provide. I just wanted, once, to be loved for who I am, not what I have." Junho set down the phone. His expression was unreadable. Zayla's heart pounded. This was the moment where everything could fall apart, and where he could feel betrayed, deceived, like she had made a fool of him. But instead, he laughed, a genuine, startled, disbelieving laugh. "My aunt thought you were after my money," he said. Zayla blinked. "What?" "My aunt, my uncle, Su Min. They all thought you were struggling, that you wanted me for financial security. They spent weeks trying to warn me about the poor American woman who was going to drain my savings." He shook his head, still laughing. "And this whole time, you could have bought and sold our entire family 10 times over." Zayla smiled hesitantly. "You're not angry?" "Angry?" He walked around the counter, took her hands. "I'm amazed. I'm amazed that you sat through those dinners, listened to their insults, wore their judgment like a coat, and never once defended yourself with the truth. You could have shut them up in a second, but you didn't. Why?" Zayla looked into his eyes. "Because I wanted them to accept me for me, not my money, and if they couldn't do that, then they weren't worth impressing anyway." Junho cupped her face in his hands. "You," he said softly, "are the most extraordinary woman I have ever known." Word spread quickly. The aunt found out first, then the uncle, then the extended family. The woman they had dismissed, the woman they had insulted, the woman they had tried to push away, was wealthier than all of them combined. The aunt called Junho suddenly sweet and accommodating. The uncle sent a gift basket with a note about how he had always known she was special. Distant cousins who had never shown interest before started reaching out, asking to be introduced. Zayla watched it all with quiet amusement. She had seen this before. The way people changed when they learned about her wealth. The way their contempt transformed into worship overnight. It was predictable, pathetic, and ultimately meaningless. Because the only opinion that mattered to her was sitting right beside her, holding her hand, looking at her like she had hung the moon. 6 months later, Sumin came home. She was different now, still quiet, still healing, but there was something lighter in her eyes, something free. She met with Zayla privately before the family dinner, just the two of them, in a quiet cafe near Hyundai. "I owe you an apology," Sumin said. Her voice was steady but soft. "A real one, not just for what I did, but for how I saw you. I wanted you to be the villain. I needed you to be the villain. Because if you weren't, then I had to face the fact that the problem was me. Zayla listened. But you weren't the villain. You were just someone who loved my brother. Someone who saw the truth and stayed anyway. Someone who pushed for me to get help even when I hated you for it. She paused. I don't know if we can ever be friends, but I want you to know I'm grateful and I'm sorry. Zayla reached across the table, took Sumin's hands. Healing isn't linear, she said gently. Or there will be hard days ahead, days when the old patterns try to come back. But you're not alone anymore, and neither is Jun-ho. You have people who want to see you well, people who will fight for you, including me. Sumin's eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were different tears, grateful tears, hopeful tears, the beginning of something new. 1 year later, Jun-ho proposed. It was not a grand gesture, no flash mob, no skywriting, no rented stadium, just the two of them. On the rooftop of the building where they first met, under a sky full of stars. He had a ring in his pocket, a simple band with a single diamond. He had bought it with his own money, even though she could have afforded something 10 times as extravagant, because that was not what mattered to them. And what mattered was the promise. I don't have much to offer you, he said. Compared to what you have, I'm nobody, but I have my heart and my loyalty and my future. And if you'll have me, they're all yours. Zayla smiled, tears streaming down her face. You're not nobody, she whispered. You're my everything. And yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and somewhere in the distance, the ocean whispered its blessing. The wedding was held in Busan, small, intimate, family and close friends only. Zayla's mother flew in from Detroit and cried through the entire ceremony. Sumin stood as a bridesmaid, calm, present, genuinely happy for the first time in years. The aunt and uncle sat in the front row, no longer disapproving, when humbled by their own misjudgment. And when Jun-ho and Zayla exchanged vows, when they looked into each other's eyes and promised forever, everyone watching understood something. This was not just a wedding, this was proof. Proof that love could survive manipulation, could survive secrets, could survive cultural differences and family drama and impossible odds. Proof that when two people choose each other, truly choose each other, nothing can break them. 2 years after the wedding, Zayla sat on the balcony of their home in Hyundai, a beautiful house overlooking the sea, bought together, built together, filled with love. She was reading a book when she heard footsteps, looked up, smiled. Jun-ho walked out and sat beside her. He put his arm around her. And together they watched the sunset paint the ocean gold. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not giving up on me? For seeing the truth? For fighting for us when it would have been so much easier to walk away? Zayla leaned her head on his shoulder. I never had a choice, she said. My heart belonged to you the moment we met. Everything else was just details. He pressed a gentle touch to her hair, and together, they watched the sun disappear into the sea. A family built from chaos, a love born from courage, a future brighter than either of them had dared to dream. They talked often about the future, about building something together, about the family they might one day have. And when they imagined it, they smiled. Because whatever came next, they would face it together. And Sumin, she had her own apartment now, a career in art therapy, helping others face the darkness she once ran from. She visited her brother and Zayla often, laughed with them, healed, one day at a time. She had even started dating, carefully, slowly, learning what healthy love looked like for the first time in her life. She was not perfect. She still had hard days, but she was no longer a prisoner of her own obsession. She was free. And that was the real happy ending. Not just for the lovers, but for everyone brave enough to face their truth and choose to change. If this story touched your heart, if you felt something, anything, Then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that love, real love, is possible. And drop a comment telling me what you thought. Did you see Soo-min's darkness coming? Did you think Zayla would stay? What would you have done? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your story. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. And remember, in a world that tries to divide us, love has no accent, culture has no borders, and every story leaves an echo. Afro-Soul tale, where Africa meets soul, and every love story is unforgettable. Until next time.